So I've covered a lot of the different subclasses for D&D 5e, but I haven't really covered any of the base classes in the game. Well, today we're going to change that with my favorite class, the Cleric. Notice I said my favorite class and not what I think is the best class or the strongest class or yada yada yada. The Cleric to me represents a really versatile kind of holy character that can define a lot of different things. You can be the archetypal heal bot that I think a lot of people look at Cleric and think like, okay, I'm going to do nothing but dish out heals and I can't roll like high damage numbers, right? There's so many different build options that you can do with this class. You can roll up a holy knight, like a crusader. You can go with what I'm calling a Templar, kind of a religious assassin of sorts. There's the Pandit, which is kind of a investigative high roleplay sort of cleric. And then there's also the Theurge, a divine spellcaster that's just absolutely devastating and honestly kind of rivals Wizard in terms of raw power output. So I'm going to show you the base class and its features, a couple of these builds, and then make note of a few spells that I think you should really pay attention to whenever you're deciding what spells to prepare for the day. Hey, Terra from the future popping in just to say this is going to be a mechanical breakdown, but if you'd like to know more about the actual lore, cultural associations, the real fictitious narrative, and possibly some Forgotten Realms lore about Cleric, my buddy AJ Pickett over on his channel has got that covered, so go check him out over there. AJ's a great friend to the channel. He's commissioned me to write some music for him in the past, so yeah, AJ, just all-around great guy, and go check out his videos for sure. So, without any further ado, let's get over into D&D Beyond and check out the Cleric. On the Cleric table, I've highlighted a few of the levels, and I feel like Cleric really feels its major power spikes, its real class-defining levels. For the Cleric, and for Warlock and Sorcerer, first level is, of course, really intense. Specifically for these characters, though, because that's where they're going to get their subclass first off. You look at the other classes, and it feels like, you know, for Fighter, for you to really come into your character, yeah, the action surge is incredible, second wind is also fantastic, but like it's at third level where you really feel like, okay, I've stepped into this character. And for Cleric especially, due to the way that the nature of their spellcasting, due to the fact that their Divine Domain gives them 2 spells that they always have prepared, as well as some more proficiencies, as well as possibly another feature, that's seriously a great jumping off point for this class. The next level where I feel like Cleric really gets a big spike is at 5th level, not only because Destroy Undead, especially if you're playing in a campaign where Undead are featured incredibly heavily, Destroy Undead completely trivializes a lot of lower CR encounters. But really specifically for 5th level is the fact that Cleric is now getting access to their 3rd level spell slot, and 3rd level to Cleric, 3rd level spells to Cleric anyways means Revivify. So, then you go a little while, and then at 8th level, it's just a massively bloated level for Cleric, really. You're getting a Divine Domain feature, which is either a potent spellcasting or a Divine Strike feature. Your Destroy Undead comes up to a CR1, and you're getting your ability score improvement. This is fantastic, and then immediately at 9th level, honestly just these 2 levels combined, this all feels like just a really fun like tier play for Cleric. You're getting access to your 5th level spells, and 5th level spells in particular for Cleric, I mean, this is just a major oomph point. And I will leave timestamps, or I'm going to try to leave chapters down here in the timeline so you all can skip around. So, like, here we're talking about base class, and then builds, and etc., etc. So, and then for a while, Cleric's still getting some really good stuff, but it's really at 17th level that not only are you getting your Divine Domain capstone, but you're also getting your 9th level spells. 9th level spells are, it's kind of interesting. The curve, I think, for power for Cleric spells is, it's like you start out with some of the most impactful spells in the game. There's a bit of a slog where Cleric is like, okay, yeah, you're getting 1 or 2 pretty great spells, but like, I think honestly 7th and 8th level spells for Cleric are possibly more impactful than the 9th level spells for Cleric. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So, the base class, you get a D8 for your hit die, so the average hit die. Proficiencies are light, medium, armor, and shields. You can also potentially get proficiency with heavy armor as a part of your Divine Domain. Weapons, simple weapons, and again, your Divine Domain may give you more. Tools, none. Same situation. Saving throws are wisdom and charisma. Charisma, mostly I think for narrative. I was kind of like, Trying this out. Okay, why really with Cleric would we go Charisma over, like, maybe Intelligence? Charisma, I think, really roots this narrative of your deity is keeping you rooted here into the material realm. Usually whenever creatures are making you make charisma saving throws, it's effects that are trying to banish you into another realm, or something that's altering the real nature of your being. So I always try to think too hard about the narrative of that. Skills, choose 2 from History, Insight, Medicine, Persuasion, and Religion. And for the equipment, you can get a mace or a warhammer if your domain gives you proficiency with it, scale mail, leather armor, or chainmail if your domain gives you proficiency with it. Already, the fact that Cleric is saying this right off the bat, it's like, that should pique your curiosity into like, wait, this can go tanky? Hell yeah, it can. A light crossbow and 20 bolts or any simple weapon, a priest pack or an explorer's pack, a shield and a holy symbol. Cleric spellcasting is the best mechanic for spellcasting, and I say the best, it is the strongest spellcasting mechanic of any class in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So let's get into why. Yeah, you get your 3 cantrips that you know at first level, you gain additional cantrips. The way that Cleric prepares and casts spells is that you don't necessarily have spells that you know, it's that whenever you finish a long rest, you can just prepare spells. Like, you can just prepare a list of any spells from the Cleric spell list, you are not stuck to them, and you can change them out whenever you finish your next long rest. If you know that something is coming up for the day, like let's say you're about to go fight an ancient red dragon for one reason or another, that's where you can pick up like calm emotions for the day to get rid of some of the, or to help out with some of the frightened condition. You can pick up, let's say, protection from energy, know that it's got fire damage, so give your allies resistance to fire damage. The flexibility with this is just incredible. You prepare a number of cleric spells equal to your wisdom modifier plus your cleric level, minimum of 1. That's still a rather healthy number in addition to all of the domain spells that you're going to get. Like, so here at first level, so 1 for your cleric level, let's say you put 16 into your wisdom score, so you've got a 3 for your wisdom modifier. So you're going out and about with 4 cleric spells that you have prepared, as well as the 2 that you always have prepared from your domain. And some of the domains give you a free cantrip on top of all that. Like, Cleric has so many spells that they're running out right at first level. This is crazy. Wisdom's your spellcasting ability. Cleric is also a ritual caster because, yeah, it makes sense for narrative, but like, woo, man, they are getting so much out of this. And you can use the holy symbol as a spellcasting focus for your Cleric spells. So, what else is unique about Cleric? Well, Cleric, like I said earlier, it's only Cleric, Sorcerer, and Warlock that get their subclass here at first level. So your Divine Domain, it says, this is just the text from the Player's Handbook. We have a few different domains over here. And if you're new to my channel, mostly what I have done is subclass reviews. So far for Cleric, I believe all I've really done is the Forge domain. But I want to get some more out because, yeah, subclasses are just like really my... I just really like that design aspect of 5e. So your Divine Domain gives you a feature at first level. It will also give you a different way to use your Channel Divinity whenever you pick that feature up at 2nd level, as well as new features at 6th, 8th, and 17th levels. They have so much that they're given with their Divine Domain. Their domain spells, it tells you that spell is, if it lists it in the table, that spell is always prepared. Let's just go over and take a look. So, if you take the Knowledge Domain, you would get Command and Identify. Those are always prepared for you. Some of them may not appear on the Cleric spell list, but you get them as a Cleric spell anyways. This is really potent in some classes like Forge Domain. Forge Domain getting access to Searing Smite, Elemental Weapon, Animate Objects, like, oh, the spell list for Forge Domain is just absolutely insane. So yeah, you get the spells, they're always prepared for you. You don't, it doesn't count against the number of spells you have prepared. Cleric spellcasting is just, oh, so powerful. Your Channel Divinity. So, again, if you're new to my channel, there's my color coding system up on top here. I mark this as blue because it really depends on the domain that you go with. First, the Turn Undead one that you're going to get with this it's great against undead, but in every other situation, it's just not a feature, I mean, realistically. But what does Channel Divinity do? Basically, you get 2 uses of your Channel Divinity. They recharge on a short or long rest, and you can use them to fuel certain divine effects. You get an additional channel divinity use at 6th level, another one at 18th level. First off, for the channel divinity turn undead, you can use a charge of this to turn an undead creature or undead creatures within 30 feet of you. You force them to make a wisdom save. If it fails its save, it's turned for 1 minute or until it takes any damage. It's not quite frightened in this way. This is a special condition. A turned creature must spend its turns trying to move as far away from you as it can, and it can't willingly move to a space within 30 feet of you. It can't take reactions. For its action, it can only use the dash action to try and escape from an effect that prevents it from moving. If there's nowhere to move, the creature can use the dodge action. First off, this is going to be against each undead. Notice that there's no clarification about a challenge rating or anything like that. It just has to fail this saving throw and then this effect happens. So, I will say, this makes a huge impact in certain adventure modules. Like we're talking Tomb of Horrors, Tomb of Annihilation, and Curse of Strahd heavily feature undead. Undead is a very common creature type to encounter at early levels. Undead are a fairly common creature type. So I do think that in the event that you're not in a setting that's going to heavily feature undead, this is just going to kind of feel like blah. But I think that undead are at least common enough to give that a blue. So the ability score improvement, you get your ability score improvement at 4th level, 8th level, 12th level, 16th level, and 19th level. You can also take a feat, and I'll talk about a few feats that I really think are massively impactful for Cleric here in a little bit. Destroy Undead, so here at 5th level, you're straight up getting an improvement to that Channel Divinity Turn Undead feature. Basically, if it fails its saving throw, and it's at or below the challenge rating listed here per your Cleric level, it's just immediately destroyed. I had a really fun encounter with this where we were going through, I think we were going through a caving system, and we were trying to find this Lich's phylactery, and there was like, I think there was like 60 zombies in this one encounter, and everybody else at the table is just like, oh crap, what the hell are we gonna do? I hadn't used Destroy Undead for the entire campaign, and we were at like 13th level by this point. And I just saw that we had like 60 zombies coming. I was the party tank. I was playing Sir Hammond, the Warforged Forged Domain Cleric. And I just went up on top of a rocky like stone pillar and was just saying like, come at me, bro. And I mean, I had like close to 120 hit points at this time. So I took a few swipes, and then on my next turn, I just blew like my Channel Divinity. And I just remember seeing Thrasher go like, what? Immediately forced all of them to make saving throws, and I think I blew out about 40 zombies with that one. I just turned into a holy nuke. Destroy Undead, whenever that goes off, that's going to feel so damn cool. You are going to feel like, oh, that is so great. But then again, it depends on the same kind of circumstances that Turn Undead does. So that right there, it's just basically a lawnmower for zombies. But hey, once it goes off, you're going to feel killer. The last feature, and this also plays into why I really think Cleric is my favorite class, is look how feature light this is, but you get so much out of the class. It mostly comes from the strength of their spellcasting. Like, their power budget really goes really hard into their spellcasting, but like, God, you can get so many different builds just out of this like single class concept with very few unique like different features. Divine Intervention. So at 10th level, what you can do is pray to your god and roll a percentile die. If the percentile die that you roll are actually lower than your Cleric level, so you roll them out and it's a 10 or lower, then your deity intervenes. The way you should think about this, oh god, this is just beautiful whenever this happens. This is rules as written, quite possibly a free 9th level spell. The effect of any Cleric spell or Cleric domain spell would be appropriate. Say that you are really asking on your deity to, your buddy just went down, you don't have the 300 gold piece diamond to use Revivify. Say there's certain conditions which their resurrection is not quite possible right now because it doesn't meet up for the died within a minute restriction or whatever for Revivify. This is essentially like Hail Mary, right? Like, that's the most appropriate term, I think, for that. This is a Hail Mary for you to throw to see if your god can't just cast a spell on your behalf. This is sick nasty. It's not very reliable. That's the only reason I've got it in blue. But whenever this happens, and it realistically has a 10 scaling up to a 19% chance of this happening, you get what is essentially a free 9th level cleric spell. Like, it's crazy awesome. And then if your deity intervenes, you can't use this feature again for 7 days. Otherwise, you can use it again after you finish a long rest. At 20th level, your call for intervention succeeds automatically. No roll required. That is and like I said earlier, that is a guaranteed free, effectively, a free 9th level cleric spell slot. And we're going to get into the spells after we talk about some of the builds, but some of what cleric gets is absolutely reality warping. So let's go over, and I prepared some builds to kind of discuss with you guys, so let's go over to that document. Alright, so looking at these cleric builds, I've given them names. These aren't official names whatsoever. It's just, I hope that they're terms that help to flesh out the archetype to you guys a little bit. First off is the Crusader. This is going to be a major holy, just devout knight. It's going to run in there, smite just the ever-loving shit out of everything. The primary combat role is going to be as a striker. Strikers are very heavy single-target focus. However, because you are playing a cleric, you've got plenty of AoE that you can dish out. Your primary damage source is probably going to be with melee weapon attacks. Your secondary role is going to be as the party tank. Usually these classes are allowing you access to heavy armor, which means, hey, go get your plate mail on and just soak up some damage. And your tertiary role is going to be as a support. I would say that this could likely be a support slash healer. Say this is like support slash controller slash healer. There's a lot of, this can perform many functions here. So the favorite domains for this kind of concept are going to be Forge, Nature, Tempest, and War. I think the one that succeeds the most on going the striker concept is War. Absolutely, that channel divinity should not be snuffed at. And then Forge domain is the best tank for cleric, I think, in the game. I think Forge domain is quite likely, at least in the top 3 tank builds that you can build. Other key features, so they're usually going to get a melee domain spell that can buff melee weapon attacks or just weapon attacks in general. They're going to get the proficiencies that we were talking about earlier. A channel divinity that somehow either enhances striking or defense. So you look at like War domain, the guided strike is just a straight up +10 to an attack roll. Or if you look at Forge domain, it allows you to give a +1 to armor class or to weapon and damage rolls to a weapon. So those are straight up just enhancing the playstyle. And then it's necessary, I feel at least, that the striker should get Divine Strike over Potent Spellcasting. And your abilities for prioritization. All the Cleric spell list is so good that I think for any build, you would be remiss not to prioritize Wisdom. Not only for that, but for some of the effects of Channel Divinities and some of your other class-like features. You could potentially build a high strength over Wiz, kind of a striker, you know? I just think that you're going to get a lot more out of prioritizing your spellcasting ability because the cleric spells are just so damn good. The next one you're going to go into is Strength and then Constitution. And I listed a few famous character examples here. If you haven't checked out these live streams, that's Merle Highchurch from Adventure Zone and Pike Trickfoot from Critical Role. The next up is Medium. The Medium is kind of your Necromancy Cleric. Yes, you can build Necromancer from Cleric. It's not just exclusive to Wizard. This Medium, the major deal that they're going to get is as a controller, their major archetype at least. In combat, the real thing for these clerics is going to be in keeping undead up and using them to suppress your enemies on the battlefield, because you are going to be heavily impactful on the action economy by doing that. I would say your secondary role would most likely be as a healer, and then your third role is going to be as a support. So this is a really interesting kind of an idea. I've seen some people attempt this build. I've never really seen it in Adventurers League because you can't, if I'm remembering right, whenever I was DMing, I was told you can't actually choose Death Domain for your Cleric Domain in AL. But I've allowed this at my table before for just my homebrew stuff. Honestly, the best concept for this is going to be Death Domain. Grave Domain does a much better job at being the priest than the medium, but hey, the flavor's there. So first off, in the domain spells, you need access to necromancy spells, period. Just that needs to be a given for the domain. Your first ability score that you're going to prioritize is Wisdom. Next is going to be Constitution and then Dexterity, mostly because you just want the hit points to stay up. Dexterity, sir, it helps you like avoid some attacks, but like your zombies or whatever it is that you're going to resurrect are going to be the ones that you want out there in there fighting in the fray. For you just need to stay alive. I haven't really seen a character play this out on a live stream. If you have, leave it down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear about it. The Pandit focuses on strictly out of combat kind of stuff. We're talking skill checks, a channel divinity that allows for specific kinds of skill checks, and they're going to get potent spell casting as opposed to the divine strikes. Their first primary combat role is going to be as a controller, and then healer, and then support, but you're most likely going to be playing these clerics and having them really shine in low combat centric campaigns. You know, these are the clerics that are doing the history checks. These are like kind of your quasi wizard. They're and I call them here like the cloistered scholar. I would say if you're talking about like Waterdeep Dragon Heist or, you know, some other like murder mystery kind of a campaign, your Pandit's going to be a lot more fun to play over there than something like maybe like Lost Mines of Phandelver. Their domain spells are going to be ones that enhance skill checks. Same thing with their channel divinity. And like I said earlier, potent spell casting. You're going to prioritize wisdom and then likely intelligence. There are ways that you can get some like quasi proficiency with the actually the checks themselves, but I don't think anything is going to help out quite as much as having at least a 1 or 2 point boost into your intelligence, at least for this concept. And then next you're going to prioritize con or dex just because you want to make sure that your combat side of you is shored up. This next build is the priest. I think this is the one most people are thinking of whenever we roll up a cleric. Your primary combat role is going to be as a healer, then controller, and then support. And I think those two can be kind of interchangeable. The three that really succeed at this are the Grave Domain, the Life Domain, and the Unity Domain. Life Domain is the real standout here because it is the most effective healing that you can possibly potentially get out of a class option in D&D 5e. They need some healing and support domain spells. Their channel divinity should somehow enhance healing or offer a support sort of feature. And then they're going to get potent spellcasting or divine strikes here. That's less really meaningful than it is on something like the Crusader. So the interesting thing, this is the way I would say that you should always focus your ability scores for the healer. And we'll get into why. So first off, always go wisdom. Second, go con. And I would say next, honestly, I put dex here. I'm going to say either strength. The reason being, you as a healer do not want to be going super early in initiative. You aren't doing anything if you're focused on healing and you're like, you know, top of the turn order and the enemies haven't even attacked yet. Like, sure, you can throw out a cantrip and do whatever, but like, honestly, to be more efficient in combat, you should probably be going on that first turn after the enemies. Let them do their thing, you know, whatever. Or you can even say, like, if you get put first in combat, I'm readying my action for, you know, someone else gets hurt. Healers in general are more effective in combat whenever they go immediately following one of the enemies. So some famous character examples are Caduceus Clay from Critical Role, and then Still Bedrock from Acquisitions Incorporated. And the next up is going to be the Templar. The Templar is, if you played Assassin's Creed, kind of think of that, you know, Assassin of the Church kind of feel. They're going to be a striker. Their second combat role is going to be as the party healer, and then their tertiary is going to be as the support, or probably the controller. The favorite domains for this are going to be Trickery and Twilight. I think Trickery might also fit the Pandit kind of role, but Trickery is the preeminent Templar sort of domain for this idea. So for their key features, you need illusion domain spells, so something that's going to provide you with invisibility or possibly darkness, blindness, deafness, some debuffing stuff, something within your domain that is going to allow you to get a little bit more control out of it. Martial weapon proficiency, channel divinity, utility, or stealth. This is something like the Trickery domain's channel divinity that allows them to create like illusory duplicates. And then a Divine Strike, I think this is less important. You could probably get potent spellcasting and you'd be, totally fine. For them, yes, prioritize Wisdom for your spellcasting. Then I would go Dex. This way you can ensure that you're going at the top of initiative during combat, because you are going to be a pretty heavy, you're going to want to make sure that you get your damage out there ASAP, and then you're able to, either by using your illusion or whatever, maximize your single target damage output. And then next you're going to go for Constitution, because we all love hit points. So I listed Jester Lavore here from Critical Role. Laura's not quite playing her like a Templar. However, Jester's build is very Templar-esque, just by the nature of the playstyle that's evoked from the features and spells that she's getting. Just that Channel Divinity, the enhancement to stealth, is already kind of pushing her towards playing Jester a little bit more roguish than I think she might have initially thought her to be. This next one up is the Theurgist. This is a major high damage dealer. I think very close to Wizard in terms of damage output. Not quite in terms of how powerful their 9th level spells can quite be. This one is you experience the damage spike pretty early on. It stays there until about the 3rd tier of play. And then quite honestly, the Wizard spell list just kind of outshines the Cleric one in terms of damage, which rightfully it should. But the Theurgist, in the meantime, is still able to really keep up. The first primary combat role is going to be as DPS. Second one is going to be as a controller. Really, for them, it's like controller, debuffing, support as well. And then healer is going to be third up because, hey, you still got your access to your cleric spells, but the AI in your brain is most likely thinking, let's do damage, let's do damage, let's do damage, and then heal up whenever people are a little hurt. So the favorite domains for this are going to be Arcana and Light. Arcana specifically because they're getting access to a lot of wizard spells, and Light because they say light, what they mean is fucking fire. Light domain is getting access to Fireball, as well as a whole lot of just intense radiant damage. They get a lot of control/damage domain spells. Channel Divinity is going to be some more other form of DPS or control. And then always, 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 you have to get potent spellcasting in order to make this concept really work. You're going to prioritize Wisdom first, and then Dexterity, because like the other damage dealers, you're going to be wanting to go first, and then Constitution after that, just to stay alive. Shikasta, so far, over in Critical Role, is building into this concept. And we haven't really seen a whole lot of him, but by noting his spells, seeing just kind of what it seems like the character is going for, Shikasta, despite being a Tempest Domain Cleric, is actually building a Theurgist right now. So those were the different builds. Let's just talk about some of the different feats that you could possibly take if your table allows for them that would really enhance your Cleric. So, first off, if you're going Light Domain, or any of the domains and you're getting access to fire damage, let's say Forge Domain, do not overlook Elemental Adept. When you gain this feat, choose one of the following damage types: Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder. Spells you cast, ignore resistance to the damage of the chosen type. Whenever you roll damage for a spell you cast that deals damage of that type, you can treat any 1 on a damage die as a 2. That's alright. You can select this feature multiple times. When you do, you must choose a different damage type. I would say most likely you're going to pick this one up for the fire, because a lot of creatures wind up getting resistance to fire damage. So this is worth it to pick up, especially if you're investing your entire character concept into Light Domain. And then, of course, Great Weapon Master. If you're going into a domain that gives you proficiency with martial weapons, this is a fantastic feat to pick up. You've learned to put the weight of a weapon to your advantage, letting its momentum empower your strikes. You gain the following benefits. On your turn, when you score a critical hit with a melee weapon, or reduce a creature to 0 hit points with one, you can make one melee weapon attack as a bonus action. Before you make a melee attack with a heavy weapon that you're proficient with, you can choose to take a -5 penalty to the attack roll. If the attack hits, you add +10 to the attack's damage. This right here, especially with War Domain, you use this with your Channel Divinity for guiding strikes. You're going to get a +5 to the attack roll, but if it hits, you add 10 to the attack's damage. That's absurd. Great Weapon Master works really, really well with that Crusader build. So same thing with the Crusader build. Heavy Armor Master is here, so you can use your armor to deflect strikes that would kill others. You gain the following benefits. You increase your strength score by 1 while you're wearing heavy armor. Bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage that you take from non-magical weapons is reduced by 3. This is so worth picking up. I just don't feel like I ever really hear people talking about Heavy Armor Master. So lucky as a feat, this is just universally a fantastic feat for absolutely every character to get. I think it's generally a little too good, so I don't allow it at my tables. But lucky on every other table, well, on most other tables, I would say, and this is here. So for Magic Initiate, sure, you can just go on and snag some more Cleric spells, or you can possibly grab some Druid spells. Druid has some pretty interesting magic to check out. I would say the cantrips are what feel like they're probably a little bit stronger. Cleric doesn't have access to a wide variety of damage types in their cantrip arsenal, but Druid actually has a little bit of punch, so it's worth checking out. Resilient to me is a must, and this should be your first priority whenever you're picking up your Cleric, mostly because you want to take this and pick Constitution for concentration checks. Choose one ability score, you gain the following benefits. You increase the chosen ability score by 1, and you gain proficiency in saving throws using the chosen ability. Take Warcaster, because there's so many Cleric spells that require concentration that you're going to want to maintain. So yes, I would say Resilient and Warcaster should likely be your top picks. So the Ritual Caster, I don't know that I feel like this is necessarily so strong to pick up specifically for this synergy, but I just thought it was worth mentioning. If you take Ritual Caster, you can get access to Find Familiar, and now your Familiar is able to deliver Cure Wounds. That's a pretty interesting idea. I don't know that I feel like that's super hyper absurd, but that's strong enough for me to at least want to make mention that, like, Find Familiar, if you don't snag it through Mage Initiate or Ritual Caster, that combo's there. Tough is another one that I want to make mention of, especially if you're going for that frontline Crusader. Your hit point maximum increases by an amount equal to twice your level when you gain this feat. Whenever you gain a level thereafter, your hit point maximum increases by an additional 2 hit points. The fact that you're able to stay up is increasing your allies' damage output. Let's just look at it like that. The last one specifically I'm going to make mention of is Warcaster. You have advantage on Constitution saving throws that you make to maintain your concentration on a spell when you take damage. I think that this right here is more than worth it to take this feat. Cleric has a lot of concentration spells that do really significant effects, provide really killer buffs and debuffs. So Warcaster alone right here, like that's instant take. You can perform the somatic components of spells, even when you have weapons or a shield in one or both hands. So here they're straight up thinking Cleric for that. When a hostile creature's movement provokes an opportunity attack from you, you can use your reaction to cast a spell at the creature rather than making an opportunity attack. The spell must have a casting time of 1 action and must target only that creature. This right here is so freaking good. Not only are you able to, and this benefits absolutely every Cleric build, if that creature comes up on you and then decides to take off for whatever reason, you can you can cast a spell that has a casting time of 1 action as a reaction because of this feature, or because of this feat. Warcaster is incredible, absolutely incredible. It manipulates the action economy in an extremely unique way. Warcaster, yeah, this is, if you get to 4th level and your table allows for feats, you gotta pick up Warcaster. So let's go over and talk about some of the spells, and then we'll wrap this video up. So I will leave this spell list rating down in the description below, and I won't go through the whole thing, but I will let you know if you see a spell that's highlighted in blue. It's one spell that I think, hey, you as a Cleric should be checking the spell out. Otherwise, the other spells that are there, I'm kind of like, they're alright on. The Cleric spell list is already super diverse, but these I think are very archetypal to the class and really help to define the Cleric playstyle. And again, this is just a table of my opinions, so you can take it or leave it, whatever you like. My only real experience comes from just playing this game for a long time, creating a lot of homebrew and designing it, as well as the hours and hours I've seen of Adventures League play. Guidance is a fantastic buffer spell. You're giving something a d4 that it can add to a certain skill check. Not super great in combat. Out of combat, this is stellar. Sacred Flame is the preeminent damaging cantrip for Cleric. Even though Toll the Dead does more damage overall, Sacred Flame also has the added benefit that the target can't benefit from cover. So if your DM is playing really tactically, this cantrip is going to be unreal strong. Just making a quick note about Thaumaturgy. I know a lot of people compare Thaumaturgy to Prestidigitation. Thaumaturgy just doesn't provide enough mechanical benefit, quite like what Prestidigitation does. But you can think of ways and get creative to make Thaumaturgy pretty cool. Toll the Dead's the next one. The really unique thing about this one is that as soon as the creature, target, whatever, as soon as it's missing even one hit point, this goes up from a d8 of necrotic damage to a d12. This is a ridiculous amount of damage output on a cantrip. This scales up with you. Toll the Dead is incredible. And there's been a little bit of contention between Bane and Bless. Bless is a lot easier to make work for you. Bane still requires a saving throw, whereas Bless, the benefits are immediately apparent. You get them, don't have to worry about it. It automatically provides a benefit. Bane is a debuff that requires the saving throws, so they're not both, I think, equal in their reliability. Bless, however, like I say on here, it's possibly the best combat-centric buffing spell for Cleric at this early level, and it has out-of-combat applications for dungeon delving dangers. God, I need to not write so many tongue twisters for myself, because Bless is giving you help for saving throws. So that's, yeah. I do want to talk about Command. Command, I've seen people go one way or the other, where they feel like Command is absolutely absurd, or they feel like Command is like one of the worst controller spells in the game. Command, I think, is hilarious, and it depends on your DM's interpretation of the spell. Command can be ridiculously good. It depends, like I said, on how creative your DM is willing to let you and him get with the rules for the spell. But generally, I do think that the command is worthwhile to pick up, if for nothing else, for ending chase scenarios. Cure Wounds is absolutely, this should come standard on absolutely every single Cleric out there. Even if you're focusing on damage, there's no reason to miss Cure Wounds. This is the preeminent healing spell for D&D 5e. It has fantastic scaling. Cure Wounds, just don't skimp out on it. The next one I want to talk about in particular, Guiding Bolt. This is one of the highest damaging first level spells in the game, and it acts as an alley-oop, because not only do you go and do the damage, but if the creature's hit with it, it has a really harsh debuff on it. That especially if you're playing with a rogue, you do Guiding Bolt, and then that rogue gets advantage, they're immediately going to look at you and just be like, oh, buddy, yeah. Actually, what I think would be pretty funny is if you multi-class Cleric into Rogue, and then you do, okay, so there's that Warcaster, you pick up Warcaster, something provokes an opportunity attack from you, you cast Guiding Bolt, it hits, and then you're up next, and you get your sneak attack in from your Rogue stuff. That's a funny build idea, but yeah. Anyways, Guiding Bolt. This spell is amazing. Healing Word, a lot of people have accused this spell of being a little too overpowered. I think the problem is that it creates a whack-a-mole kind of situation where Healing Word is able to bring somebody back that's making death saves. I don't really have a big problem with that, because it's not my intention to really kill characters. So Healing Word, for the most part, I think it's mechanically functioning okay. The thing with Healing Word, it's combat only. I would never use Healing Word outside of combat unless I just absolutely did not have Cure Wounds or a short rest available. Healing Word, like I said, in combat, really great. If not, don't ever use it. Inflict Wounds is the highest damaging Cleric spell at first level. This has fantastic scaling, especially if you're going with, like I said, the Crusader build. This is an incredible spell. Don't miss out on Inflict Wounds. So, Protection from Evil and Good, I've given this a 5 across the board. Like, quite honestly, not enough people really give this spell some love. Protection from Evil and Good is an incredible buff to give to one of your allies, especially if you know that you're going up against, like, I believe it's Celestial, Elemental, Fey Fiends. I don't know about Undead. I can't remember if Undead's on that list. Are they? Yes. Okay, cool. So it also gives those creatures like disadvantage on attack rolls against the target. Like, I just never hear Protection from Evil and Good getting nearly enough love. Next is Sanctuary, just a standard pretty fantastic buff to pick up. The real combo to go with Sanctuary is to use something else with your action and then use Sanctuary, because if you use Sanctuary with your bonus action before your action, then Sanctuary is ended. So make sure that you do, like, you're always doing Sanctuary last in your turn order. Shield of Faith is a straight up +2 to armor class. You like more armor class? Shield of Faith. Second level, Cleric actually gets a ton of really useful spells here. Let's talk Enhance Ability. Advantage on a roll is mathematically a +4 or a +5. That's about to a check. So Bear's Endurance is such a strong effect to carry this to a 5. Whenever you're choosing it from the different effects, you might see the mental ability scores, or the mental abilities aren't really getting any other benefits. However, just the fact that you can invoke that Bear's Endurance is enough to take this spell. Hold Person, because it's Hold Person. Lesser Restoration, because you are the Cleric, and not only are the benefits in the spell enough to really take this, but from adventure writing and just doing a bunch of different modules, there are a lot of effects in those modules that say, like, this can be ended by an effect similar to Lesser Restoration. So there's a lot more benefits to that spell than just what's actually written in the book. Silence, and if you're able to get Blindness, Deafness, those are some of the most effective mage counters in the game, so pay attention to Silence. It's also great for stealth. Spiritual Weapon. Enough people talk about this. This spell's existence alone is enough to make Cleric absolutely ridiculous. You get to cast it as a bonus action, and you control this thing for the next minute. And while it's available, it does 1d8 damage. As you cast it at higher levels, it can do 2d8 damage. And that's already outpacing what a Great Axe is doing. Then, once you cast it at third or fourth level, 3d8 damage. It just keeps scaling. Spiritual Weapon. Having that and being able to control it as a bonus action and make attacks with it while you're also doing other stuff. It doesn't require your concentration. This spell is insane. Spiritual Weapon is one of the best damaging spells in the game. Warding Bond is one that I'm going to make a little note to. I've personally seen this spell make a lot of impact in a game. You cast this on your frontliner, you hang back, you're taking some damage that they're taking, sure, but it's a lot easier for you to cast Cure Wounds on yourself than for you to run up and try and fix the damage that's done on the Barbarian. You're giving them all resistance to every damage type. Warding Bond is incredible. Incredible. Animate Dead, so if you're going for that medium Cleric, the kind of Necromancer Cleric, this is definitely a spell to pick up, because that's how you're going to play your Cleric. Bestow Curse, if your DM is a lot more flexible, and you guys are creative enough to think of a way to exploit a invented curse, Bestow Curse can be brutal, but even rules as written, this is already a fantastic spell. Don't miss out on it unless you're thinking that it kind of conflicts with your character's alignment whenever you're building them. Protection from Energy. I keep hearing people kind of crap on this spell. I think just because it's at third level, they don't feel like this spell is that fantastic. However, I have to disagree. The damage types that it lists are very, very common. And I say here, having resistance to your choice of a damage type from a list of common and medium damage types is nice, and that this is a way to overcome extreme temperatures, though you shouldn't take this over Revivify unless you're just out of diamonds. Protection from Energy, getting resistance to fire damage alone is fantastic. I don't know that that's necessarily worth a third level spell, but consider the fact that there's not really another way this early to get resistance to that damage type, just how absolutely common fire damage, cold damage, how common those damage types are. I don't think that this spell is worth scoffing at. Protection from Energy, I think, is fairly decent. Revivify, quite honestly, if you're not taking this on your Cleric, you're playing Cleric wrong. Straight up. You are one of the only classes that has access to this spell. It is the preeminent way in which you are able to bring people back from the dead in D&D. This is the resurrection spell for D&D, here available at 5th level. This should honestly, like I say on here, this should just come standard on Cleric. Don't skip Revivify, please. Sending, I think if your table does split up very often, sending shouldn't be missed. This is basically a cell phone call to anyone that's on the same plane of existence as you. This is a great communication tool, and it can lead to really pushing the story forward, gathering information, So Spirit Guardians, if you're playing a frontlining cleric, this has the potential to do more damage than Fireball if you maintain it for more than one turn. And once Fireball does its damage, it's like one and done. Spirit Guardians can continue to do the damage. Really, I think Spirit Guardians mathematically has the potential to do more damage than Fireball within 1 or possibly 2 turns. Like, it's, yeah. That, and also being in combination with you going on ahead and making any weapon attacks, yeah. Banishment 5, straight across. This is such a great control spell. Like I say here, this can completely shut down a combat scenario with specific creature types, and is the bane of DMs that don't know that this spell exists. Banishment can ruin your prep work, DMs, so go check that spell out. Don't ban it, because it's great, but Banishment is, woo, so good. Basically, you're either going to get rid of it for a minute, or you're going to send it back to where it came from permanently. Either situation is incredibly strong. Divination, so in combat, this can possibly give you some info. You know, I guess you can say that it might help you exploit a creature's weakness. Out of combat, it's going to be much more useful, but it is a foreknowledge tool. I think foreknowledge kind of spells, I really think, need to be role-played out a little bit more than just the DM giving you an answer. I think thinking of clever ways in which this can be played out a little bit better is going to really enhance what the spell does for at least me, at least in 5e. I just really discourage players from trying to use spells as a means to subvert roleplay, you know. So divination, I think it's great. But yeah, just try to have more fun with it than just being like, oh, we need a hint, DM. Commune, I think it's the same thing as I said with divination, except this time it is absolutely, your DM has to tell you yes or no if the answer is, and it has to be truthful. It's better than divination, and divination's already really good. Dawn is the first 5th level spell I will say you should always, always, always have prepped. This is 40-10 radiant damage in an absolutely massive area, and the light that it emits is sunlight. So if you're running Curse of Strahd and your characters, you have a cleric that has prepped Dawn, be ready for that boss fight to get absolutely cheesed. Dawn is incredible, incredible, incredible. Dispel Evil and Good is another one that I've given. I basically said here, it's a flexible choice of either protection from evil and good or banishment with a passive perk until you do choose. I really do dig this spell. It's giving you a little bit more versatility. Dispel Evil and Good is a pretty fantastic buff. I do want to make mention here of Flame Strike. I've heard people absolutely laud this spell. Flame Strike is not worth really taking, quite honestly. Like I say here, this is just Fireball with half the damage being Radiant. This is not what a 5th level spell should do. Flame Strike is, the imagery is really cool, but other than that, it just mechanically doesn't perform like a 5th level spell should. And then Greater Restoration, same kind of thing that we had with Lesser Restoration, only more powerful. And a lot of adventures tend to do the Greater Restoration or similar effect thing more so than they do with Lesser Restoration. So Greater Restoration, great healing spell already, made more flexible by the fact that a lot of adventure modules give it additional perks. So yeah. So Mass Cure Wounds, 3d8 damage or 3d8 healing that you can pass out there. The thing that I say with this is, of course, it shines in combat. The thing is, if you're trying to cast this out of combat, only really try to cast it out of combat if you don't have a short rest available, and if during that short rest none of the players have their hit dice available. Otherwise, it is just kind of like you're blowing a 5th level spell slot for what could have been supplemented for a cheaper resource cost. Scrying is, like I say here, probably the best scouting and intel spell in the game. If you're playing on a table that does a lot of really, really high roleplay, Scrying is going to be possibly the most powerful spell in your arsenal. Blade Barrier, another spell that I just don't really hear get quite enough love. You're creating an obstruction. It's a massive damaging obstruction. While it is a damage type that a lot of things have resistance to in some manner or another at higher levels, the fact that you're creating an obstruction that does deal damage is difficult terrain, and there's a huge fucking wall of swords and knives and everything. don't skip out on Blade Barrier. I'm honestly not super sure why Cleric gets it, but hey, I'm not going to complain. Okay, so here we are. I think this is really where Cleric starts to get its big bad boy spells. Harm, I want to make just kind of mention of it. I don't highlight it as like Cleric should always check this out. It is 14d6 necrotic damage, and the enemy's maximum hit points, sorry, are reduced by the damage. I would say, like I say on this table here, DMs, if you have a player cast Harm on one of your enemies that has legendary resistance, that's usually worth blowing legendary resistance to overcome. That effect is intense. You don't have a way to heal it back up unless your enemy is immune to like having its maximum hit points reduced, which not very many are. Harm is crazy good. Heal, so I did the math on this one. Heal is actually a flat 70 hit points to heal, which is equivalent to 20d6 hit points. That's the average roll of rolling out 20d6. And it ends some pretty detrimental conditions. Heal, very well worth that 6th level spell slot. 20d6. So let's talk about that in terms of d8s, though, to compare it to Cure Wounds. So that 70 right there is actually about the same as rolling 15, so let's just say 16 d8. So that's like casting Cure Wounds at, what would that be, 15th level? Like, I mean, oh man, Heal is crazy awesome. Honestly, if you have Heal and you're just looking for a curing effect, there is no reason, quite honestly, to use Cure Wounds above 5th level. Hero's Feast, I've heard way too many people really crap on this spell. Hero's Feast is such a great buff. I say here, this is quite possibly the best prep buff in 5e. If you've got the time to prep for this and you do Hero's Feast, this is an amazing buff that you're going to get. And it's available for 24 hours. Eat this before any encounter that inflicts the poison or frightened condition, so dragons, or against most spellcasters. Too many people ignore Hero's Feast, and it's a damn shame. It really is. I love that spell. Don't skip out on Hero's Feast. Planar Ally. So the thing with this spell, it doesn't have a CR restriction. The way that you're going to phrase it and talk with your DM, this is usually always going to be in a way that either you or the DM is going to try and figure out making it useful to you. At least if you're sitting on a table with not an asshole DM. So Planar Ally, I think that this is universally really good. And quite honestly, I would so much rather cast Planar Ally than Conjure Celestial. And I'll talk about that one here in a second. True Seeing, this is where invisibility and ethereal jaunt are no longer anything scary. So right here with True Seeing, you get True Sight. Honestly, it's overcoming major illusions if your DM likes to use those a lot in dungeons. So it's an expensive resource. I mean, a 6th level spell slot is woof. But like, I mean, if you really need it, if something's going invisible enough and popping in and out from the ethereal plane, this is probably worth casting. Ward of Recall, because it's fast travel, and at this level of play, you need fast travel. Word of Recall, I absolutely recommend picking up. It just makes the whole story a lot more convenient. Conjure Celestial. This is a 7th level spell to summon either, if you only have the core rulebooks, a Pegasus or a Coatl. Those are not worth a 7th level spell slot. I don't really care what anybody says. They both have some, well, no, the Coatl has some spells that it can cast in its arsenal. Sure, that's okay. Neither one of them is really effective enough in combat to justify casting a 7th level spell slot. Especially when her Planar Ally is available, which, like, can I just summon a Coatl with that instead of my Conjure Celestial? I don't know. Anyways, sure, it's under your control, but, like, it's just not worth it, quite honestly. But if you do cast that spell at 9th level, you can summon a unicorn. Honestly, they could have made Conjure Celestial, you can summon a 5th level or lower CR celestial creature, and I would have felt like it would have been something worth picking up, possibly, because the unicorn has some healing magic, it's got a teleportation feature, it's got some innate magic. There are ways in which I would say that the unicorn could be worth a 7th level spell slot, but for the most part, Conjure Celestial, rules as written, I think that the spell is garbage. Don't be tempted into it. That spell is a trap. Divine Word, the big thing that makes this so powerful is that this is a bonus action for what's effectively an AoE banishment against particular creature types, and then if anything has less than 50 hit points within that area, it incurs an additional, like, debuff, which can scale all the way down to, if it has less than 20 hit points, it's just killed outright. Divine Word, I think of all the 7th level spells, I think it's worth picking up. One spell I just totally forgot to highlight was actually Firestorm. Firestorm kind of redeems the garbage that was Flame Strike. Firestorm right here is the average damage of Fireball cast at 6th level, but in 40 connecting 5x5 areas. So if you're looking at this on the battlefield, it's supposed to be 10-foot 10-foot cubes arranged so that they're connecting. So this spell is the damage of Fireball cast, like I said, 1 level lower than the spell slot that this spell requires in an insanely huge area. Plane Shift, Transportation, like I say on here, I wouldn't recommend saving your 7th level spell slot specifically to cast this, but it's a lot less restricted because Word of Recall is like you have to designate a specific area. Plane Shift is a lot less restrictive in that means, so Plane Shift can be a really, really good way to get out of a really bad combat scenario and potentially save your party's lives without having to bring them back from the dead. So we're going to skip on down. I do think I'd be a little remiss not to talk about Regenerate, Resurrection, and Symbol. For the most part, I think that Resurrection is mostly just for narrative-based resurrection for NPCs or important background characters, unless your campaign specifically features time travel, in which case Resurrection is like, okay, this could be a little bit better, but for the most part, it's a little too expensive. I think the spell represents a lot of sacrifices made on behalf of the character in order to get to this level, so it can be the kind of thing where you are resurrecting a dead relative or dead friend, something like that, that's been dead within the last century. So, Resurrection, I think in most other cases you're just going to use Revivify or Raise Dead. Regenerate. I think that the spell is alright. In combat, it's not really giving you a whole lot of love. In combat, like you're getting 1 hit point back at the start of each of your turns. That's okay, whatever, I guess. Out of combat, however, if you're playing in a grittier campaign with a DM that actually starts doing things like dismemberment, or whatever, some more brutal stuff. Since mechanically we don't actually have a system for dismemberment in 5e, I can't really say that this has innate like mechanical benefits because of that. You know, we don't have a rule that means like whenever you lose a body part, then XYZ thing happens. So Regenerate, I'm like, I wish I could give you more. I know you're good, but yeah. And then Symbol is a really appealing. It's a really appealing spell, and I know that the effects are pretty good. The problem for me is that you can't designate creatures that aren't affected by it, and I say that this is a fantastic amount of control, and this is the kind of spell that DMs out there, if this does go off on your BBEG, burn legendary resistance, because Symbol can shut down a combat. So it either A, it's absolutely absurd, or B, it just requires way too much setup to really make super effective. I think Symbol, the power of it, and the potential for it is really great. I just think practically it's not all that strong. So for Anti-Magic Field, this is another one that I think if you're playing the Crusader, this is going to feel like where you are really, really being the purifier of magical energy that you meant to be. So for Anti-Magic Field, I'm sure this bubble is only around you. However, a lot of spells that attempt to get shot in your direction, you can't cast spells, but spells also just like dissipate whenever they're in your area. This also immediately banishes summons. You want to just straight up get into melee range of a beholder and just start smacking it down without worrying about any of the eye rays. Here you go. Anti-Magic Field. This spell is so good. Quite possibly the best, I would say, Cleric 8th level spell on their list, which is weird because it doesn't even really feel divine. And I just realized Holy Aura wasn't highlighted. Earthquake. So, If you run a lot of mass warfare on the table, if you're in a major, casual siege kind of a thing, always prep Earthquake. This brings down structures. You can cause massive fissures that are going to knock characters prone. They're going to take falling damage, so this has the potential to deal. Now, sure, it sounds weak. 1d6 and they get knocked prone. That's whatever. Earthquake, though, the power of it comes in the destructive power it has against buildings, structures, whatever. Earthquake is, I would say, if you're running the kind of D&D with mass warfare, you need to check out Earthquake. And with Holy Aura, I will say I've heard some people kind of trash this spell. I've never agreed with that idea. Creatures of your choice getting advantage on all saving throws and disadvantage on attack rolls against them is already amazing, but the blinded condition on a hit on top of this is just a chef's kiss. This should come standard on every cleric. This is so worth your 8-level spell slot. It just seems like advantage on all saving throws and disadvantage on attack rolls against them at an 8th level spell is kind of what you'd be expecting for an 8th level spell. And then last off, let's talk about the last four for their 9th level spells. I honestly feel like the most effective stuff with the cleric comes at earlier levels. And then here at 9th level, Mass Heal is, I think, their most useful 9th level spell. But let's start off with Astral Projection. This is a teleportation spell. The big problem with Astral Projection, I think if you're running this in the Forgotten Realms, this is a story setup kind of a spell where you know that you have to track something down to the astral plane. And I think there and only there is this spell going to be really helpful. Like, this is a campaign ender spell. This is the kind of thing where your party needs to go and traverse a plane, and you are the means for them to do that. That's cool for narrative, and I think that's about it. I just don't really think that traveling to a plane that you already know is super dangerous, because they've got the Astral Dreadnought in there. Astral plane is tricky. I just don't think that Astral Projection is really worth picking it up and always having it prepared as your 9th level cleric spell. So for Gate, like I say right here, great for fast travel to specific areas and can be a great escape from a harsh battle, but it's all very particular in making it useful. Summoning the creature from another plane is just an invitation for chaos, because generally that creature is not going to be under your control, and if you're summoning them with a 9th level spell, and I mean, if you name that particular creature, it could be helpful. But yeah, Gate, I think specifically, I like the narrative of the spell. I like the real image that it evokes, but I think more often than not, Gate might just cause havoc, and you're going to want to do your setup with it, and then it's a cool fast travel spell, and then that's kind of about it. It is interplanar travel. I don't want to miss out on that. It is interplanar travel. So Mass Heal is the one that I will definitely say that you should really focus on for a 9th level spell. Unless your party members' hit points get reduced by some manner, like a Nightwalker or something, you are going to be able to completely heal up your party using this. Period. Mass Heal is the, oh crap, we just need a reset on our hit points right now. In a party of 4 or 5, you are most likely going to be healing them up to their full hit points. It's 700 hit points that you can just dish out. Also cures them of certain conditions. Mass Healing Word is incredible. True Resurrection is a pure narrative-based resurrection. Unless your party really involves time travel, True Resurrection is simply there for you to build a character around bringing someone back in your backstory. You could say it could be used to resurrect a long dead king or whatever. There could be some story elements there. Sure, it's all narrative. You are never, unless by some means of time travel, you are never going to practically use this on a party member. One of your allies is not going to die, be dead for 200 years, and then you're going to need to be there to true resurrect them. Just punch my light. I don't know if that showed up on camera. A very interesting spell that represents how strong your cleric is, but mechanically what True Resurrection does, it overcomes some of the, like I say here, lower level resurrection magic detriments, but it's way too expensive. You're just going to be able to do all this a lot easier with Revivify, Raise Dead, or just regular Resurrection. I generally think that True Resurrection, as a 9th level spell, sure, it makes sense as to why it's here, but mechanically there is no reason to take it except for story convenience. And then in that case, like, just prep it whenever you know you're going to need it after a long rest. Like, specifically say, like, oh, that guy's been dead for 200 years. Unless tomorrow is day 1 of year 201, don't worry about it. Go to sleep, prep through resurrection, then bring him up. Don't stress about it. So yeah, that is going to be it for the Cleric. Like I said, you can find all of this stuff down in the description below. Wow, my throat is absolutely shot. I thank you guys so much for being here. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Did you learn something new about Cleric? Have you had a Cleric character that you just had a really fun moment with? Let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Do all the YouTube things. Like, comment, subscribe. If you're new to my channel, I do an absolute ton of D&D content, as well as homebrew design. In fact, one of my homebrew classes actually just went up on the DM's Guild a few days ago. It's the merchant class that you can go pick up over there for $4.99. You get a pretty fun class, features a lot of all original commissioned artwork, and I'm really, really proud with how that thing came out. So thank you guys for being here. I hope you all are staying safe, staying healthy, and I hope to see you in the next one.